Okay, okay. So what do you do? What do you make of a situation where you're working a job and your spouse is working at the same job, and one of you guys leave maybe under unfavorable circumstances or something, and you left that job and your spouse is still there, but your spouse is the type of person who does a lot of talking. So today we're going to talk about discretion, folks, because I don't think I've touched on this much. And today will be a perfect day for us to have this discussion about discretion. In cases where you work a job and your spouse works along with you, and one of you talks a lot and you're a chatterbox, and the other one just does their job dutifully and goes home. So one is an introvert and one is an extroverted person, these couples. Okay? And in these situations, you have a lot of these situations that happen where someone cannot keep their mouth closed. Loose lips sink ships. You've heard the cliche. Okay? So one of these people leave the job and the other spouse is still on board working there. And you have a situation where that person who's still working at the job has decided to discuss the personal terms of or things going on in the household with the other spouse, with coworkers, because that person just does not know how to just go to work and go home. They have to talk and tell all of their business. There are people like that. I tell you, I'm annoyed with these type of people, but we're just going to just entertain this for a minute. Discretion, right? You need to be smart enough to realize that there are all types of sociopaths and narcissists at your job who are seeking information, and you're not protecting your spouse nor yourself when you run your mouth, because loose lips sink ships. So you're telling everything from the bills that you had to pay to medical situations, to things going on with your children and so forth, and all of these things that are unnecessary. Right? Because maybe the other spouse wasn't comfortable with these coworkers. They never talked to them. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, I've had a few friends that this has happened to, and they're infighting about, discretion. Should they have used discretion? Or was it okay to just, it doesn't harm anything. We're just at work and these are just friends, right? But they're not. And if you're not aware of the fact that there are narcissists who are probing you for information, and you're giving out vital information on your spouse or your friends or something, people are close to you who no longer work this job, then you're doing a terrible disservice to them. But I want you guys to think about that, this discretion, because, I know people personally in my family, and I'm not going to say any names, but I had a situation in my family where one of my family members, who was estranged for many years, and really they were through a marriage or something, and they're not really officially family as far as us growing up or coming up together. But this particular family member, they are in recent times had been reintroduced into the family, so to speak. And what they did was, instead of them going through the proper channels, like the generation that they grew up with and the people that they know, their parents, relative to the parents of the other relatives or something like that. Let me give an example, like aunts and nieces and cousins and stuff like that. They're in that category. So what they decide to do is they decide to get back into the family structure, and they immediately befriend the children of one of their cousins. Now, they don't know their cousin too well. They just met the person. They don't know too much about the person. And whenever they would see this particular family member, they would snub this person. They didn't have much to say to him. But yet, that family member found out that they were giving calls to that person's child. Now, these children are grown, obviously. But that's not using good discretion, because you just came into a family situation. It's very sensitive as it is. And, there was some bad blood maybe in the previous years or something that had passed. And you're getting back into this family structure. Everyone's grown now. And you didn't come up with this with the people in the family, but, you're in now. So what do you decide to do instead of you befriending and making acquaintance with the cousins that you missed out on your whole life? You decide to go to their children and become friends without even knowing them, without even acknowledging them. So here's the deal with that. You're going to snub a family member that you would have grown up with, right? That your mother has relative ties to these family members. And you decide to circumvent them and go to their children and become friends and hang out with their children. And you wonder why they're upset about that. They don't know you. They don't want you around their kids. They don't trust, and maybe their kids are not making the right decisions or something. They're grown, but young people do things. And so in this case, maybe they're not making the right decisions. But the first thing a person would do if they're being decent is they would establish strong ties with other family members before they decided to, exchange phone numbers and talk to, I would call them super teenagers. If you're 20 years old or something like that, you're just a fucking kid, right? And you're a 40-year-old, 50-some-year-old woman hanging out with pretty much 20-year-olds, right? You're not trying to get to know the other 40-something-year-olds that you missed out growing up with, but you're trying to hang out with their children. So you're not using good discretion. People do these things all the time, right? These job circumstances, these family circumstances, same thing. When you're doing stupid things, right? So you work at the same job as your spouse, right? And you work in different places, but you run your mouth and you tell everything that goes on in your home. And so when this spouse comes to work, they have to answer questions about what y'all did last night or what was said or when y'all going to buy another car and all these types of things because you're stupid and you don't know how to use discretion. You're not aware of the people who are probing you for information and the reasons why. And that's really sad. So this person has to suffer or fight with you and explain to you why they want to keep their personal business at home, right? It's one of those reasons why they have a lot of rules about not having spouses work together and stuff like that, because it's a conflict of interest on some level. And this is one of those examples of how these things play out. I think that's really silly though. And your responses are always, what did I do? What's wrong with that? There's a whole lot wrong with that. Keep your mouth shut. If you come to work, you should only be working that job to get a paycheck, do what you have to do your duties, and go home for the day. It shouldn't be a whole lot of other things happening. But this is the problem with people who need acceptance, right? Who need validation, who can't just sit quietly. They have to talk to think. Some people think before they talk, and some people have to literally run their mouths before they can get their brain going. Almost like when you're driving a stick shift or something. You have to keep that foot on the clutch. And their mouth is like the clutch. They have to keep their foot on the clutch to keep the motor running. And that motor mouth is attached to their brain. Their brain has to function when that mouth runs. You get what I'm saying? Loose lips sink ships, folks. If you're doing this type of thing to your spouse and you're having problems or you're not getting along in your family or something, maybe you're talking too much. Maybe you're doing too much. You're not respecting these people. You're not respecting their personalities or who they are, because introverts don't like sharing their personal information unless it's with people who are they're close with. People they can trust. They don't just trust anyone, right? And they have a right to feel that way because maybe they've seen some things in the world that these clueless people haven't seen, which makes them clueless. So yeah, I really had to speak on it because it was one of those things that, I felt pretty bad about it. And I just did not know how to, I didn't have information. I didn't have the right kind of answers, because when you're talking about a marriage, you're talking about two people who are together and they're going to have to work these things out. But I do know one thing. I do know that people need to keep their mouth shut, especially in these situations. It makes no logical sense to tell how many bills you guys have in your home or any of these things. I mean, just think about that. That's personal information. right? I love bad behavior, folks. But I don't love mouth runners. I don't love people who have to keep talking continuously to get their brains going, because those people tend to say the wrong things at the right time. You get what I'm saying? Check out my book. It's on Amazon. It's on my website. You can pick it up there. www.thinkbehavior.info. It's called I Love Bad Behavior, folks. It's a pretty good book. And like and subscribe to the videos and share them. I appreciate the new subscriptions. And, you know, I really appreciate when you folks support. You can go over to the website and donate as well. And you folks have a pretty good day. If you're married to someone and you're working at the same job and you're a mouth runner, right, try to use some discretion. Try to think about your spouse's feelings before you start talking about what's going on in your bedroom, or, you know, what y'all fought about at the kitchen table last night, or any of these things. You know, it's disrespectful and it's rude, and it's just not in good taste. See you later.